too great. The fee is too great for them. They don't want to see a headline saying, politician, Lib Dems, wherever it might be, goes to pot.
I did send you my correspondence with James Brackenshaw after your exchange in the House.
There's no intellectual giant, this new minister. I have on the table of Sol, who mentioned his name.
Yeah.
It's not good.
So, unfortunately, the medical situation at the moment is actually only being driven forward to monopolise and privatise medical cannabis in this country. As I say, as a seed producer, I started my company after the Runciman report, in the belief that things were going to get better. GW Pharmaceuticals started around the same time. He's received £10 million. I've had at least £2 million spent criminalising me, seizing my company's assets, destroying them. On the last occasion, I didn't even get a receipt. It's thousands of pounds worth of equipment, destroyed it, no receipt.
Any other questions?
Do you mind if you flash pictures?
Not at all. Carl.
Hi, I've just got a question about the last one in the press release, which says expunging existing cannabis criminal records of approximately 1 million people, resulting in additional income tax revenue of 200 million. Could you just explain why those records would be expunged and how that extra revenue would be generated?
Well, essentially that figure came from when we look at the annual incomes of people who have got clean records and people that don't. And the average, the differential is around about £1,000 a year, which taxed at 20 pence in the pound. That's where the figure comes from. The total number of people that have been, I think the millionth cannabis offence was about 1999, 2000. So we're probably up to about 2 million altogether. About 1.7 per person on average. So say about just over 1 million people over the years have had a cannabis criminal record. So that's where the figures come from, essentially.
So you're not talking about removing people who already have criminal records, it's a projection forward of people who would not be subsequently convicted.
If their existing records were expunged and people could then find that careers that had been closed to them would reopen, if that happened, then I think those existing people who had existing records may find that their earning capacity increases. On the other hand, looking forward, it's people whose earning capacity would not be artificially reduced as a result of it.
I think it's one other, I want to give an optimistic note, but I think there's one chance. We haven't had a debate in this new Parliament on this, and except for the reefer madness one of Charles Walker. But there is, a third of Parliament has changed. I just had a conversation, to give you some idea how Parliament has changed. Just when I was coming down, I had a phone call, and a Conservative MP said, "You're talking about blowjob gate, are you?" And this was, you didn't get this sort of conversation from many Conservative women MPs in the past when they raised this. It's a long story, which she was quoted as saying, that was the way of getting called by the Speaker. But it's a younger generation of MPs who had a different experience than the third that left the House last time. So there must be some amongst those people with the courage to take an intelligent decision. There's also the fact that this is the most independent group of MPs. There have been more people voting against their party in this Parliament than any other for a generation. So there is a strong line of independence from all sides, and one hopes that the people who are, as they are a younger group, there might be a chance of getting something worthwhile on the books. But I'll make an undertaking. I'll get debate on this, and we'll trawl through the MPs and see who's there. We know there are people who will make a stand, but let's find out how strong it is. And the case hasn't been made, I'm afraid, for a while now.
Could I just make a comment on the previous question? There is potentially a correlation cause confusion here in this issue, because it could be that the people, to put it really simply, it could be the people who get caught as stupid out and they never will earn more, or other social factors that make a difference in the first place, that was the cause for A, them getting caught, and B, them earning less. So we can't necessarily believe that people will earn more. I buy your argument,
Yeah.
it seems logical, but we need a little bit of caution for that reason. in
Well,
methodology.
as I was saying, one of the other points on the sort of tax revenues generally is, of course, if as a result of taxation and regulation usage goes down, then so of course do the tax revenues. So, you know.
Yeah.
I think I should just say that Tom Brake, before he left, left a note saying he has to be on a statutory instrument, which Paul can no doubt explain what that means. But it sounds very painful.
He's really tortured.
But he wanted to make the point, which I think most of us will probably know, that at the Lib Dem conference on Sunday, they are discussing a drugs motion that is seeking to shift emphasis from enforcement to healthcare, call for the Portuguese model to be investigated, as well as an alternative framework for a strictly controlled and regulated cannabis market.
They've got some very good new people. I mean, Julian is very good on the subject, and amongst new MPs.
Yes. They don't do it.
What?
The Lib Dems keep promising that they're going to do something about the drug problem. And before the last election, on their website, they're supporting, reforms, but
I think
They
at
don't
the end of the
actually
day,
seem to actually debate it or to push it forward at all.
I think at the end of the day, it's not the politicians that need to be persuaded, it's the editor of the Daily Mail. And, who needs an advisory council when you've got the editor of the Daily Mail to consult on drugs policy? And that, I think,
But they'll never change. I mean, they write for the curtain twitchers of suburbia.
Well, they do. I mean,
yeah, but on the other hand, if the curtain twitchers of suburbia find their taxes might not go up or might go down, or their pensions might improve, if they, the economic argument is something that even the curtain twitchers of suburbia might take note of.
That's
rather more so than anything else.
That's why one of the principal things that we've adopted in the last 6 months is the Press Complaints Commission. Now, it certainly is toothless. And some of the decisions they've given have been absolutely unbelievable.
I've seen your website, but you've actually put in...
that's right, but I mean, the point is now that every single time there is an inaccuracy about cannabis in the press, we make a complaint. And that puts the newspaper, requires the newspapers to jump through hoops. And, they'll get tired of that. It costs them money. They hired Willie Notcutt, one of the GW consultants. They hired Willie Notcutt to actually try and fight one of my last complaints. I mean, one of the most amusing ones, those of you who know Peter Hitchens, Peter Hitchens back I think in January described cannabis as a sinister poison, which is one of the whole issue. And I made the complaint, and it was rejected. He was just expressing his view, etc. And so I took it to the independent reviewer, and I said essentially, look, if Peter Hitchens wants to call it sinister, that's fair enough, because that's his opinion. But it's not a poison, and I laid out a whole list of reasons. Cannabis is less toxic than raw potatoes. I laid out a whole list, and eventually I got a response from the independent reviewer, Lieutenant General Sir Michael Wilcox, which said, Mr. Anthony, blah blah blah. I'm happy that you've shown that cannabis is not a poison in the general sense. Mr. Hitchens was using it as a metaphor.
Whose pockets are you?
Any other questions? The event?
No. It was on the back of Mr. Flynn and Dr. Blackmore. All we really asked for is an evidence and science-based policy. It's been skewed off so much, and especially the ACMD, it's become a farce. So I was just wondering, how can we actually get it back to being science and evidence?
Follow Sarah Graham on Twitter. She complains of being bored all the time. I can't believe it.
And to take another question,
ACMD.
sorry, to take another question onto that.
Well, while you think about it, I'm glad you asked the question, but I suppose you can tell already that if we had an answer, I think all of us would have given it.
So just come to me.
And so you're just sort of confirming that.
Just
I
make the
don't
point
know.
that it's just so skewed now, and obviously Professor Nutt is doing his best to try and get some kind of semblance back on track, but
Professor Nutt was sacked because he was caught in possession of an intelligent idea.
It's even worse than being caught in possession of heroin.
Yeah, indeed. But I mean, I think legislation is normally based on bad science, and people are shocked to hear this wonderful democracy we behave. like rational human beings.
Is there not
What he done? This is politics.
Unfortunately, Professor Nutt makes mistakes. He's the person who said that the genes in cannabis had been turned up.
Everybody makes mistakes.
Yeah.
But he is in favour, okay, he can make a mistake, but he is in favour of look at the science, look at the evidence and use that. And if there's a mistake gets in, well, somebody will correct it. But I would just like to say, last night I was at one of a meeting of a new Plymouth society, the Plymouth Skeptics in the Pub. And the Skeptics in the Pub are spreading quite wildly, like the Café Scientifique. There are philosophical pub meetings, and this in a small city like Plymouth, there's 3 different ones. Oh, and there's the humanists in the pub as well. Now, all of these groups, in some way, are people coming together because they want rationality, evidence, science based to whatever it is they're interested in, whether it's UFOs or assisted dying or whatever it is. But there is, quite a lot of people, and they're all ages there, quite a lot of young people, but actually all ages were there. And coming out of the discussion there was an awful lot of things about, but what's the evidence, and how can we make the evidence count, and how can we make people see that evidence was about homeopathy and stuff last night. But so I'm sort of encouraged by a groundswell of people who do care.
I spoke to an organisation called Truth Juice, which sounds very similar to this, but in Birmingham and Wales. Sounds very similar.
Sounds a bit more tasty, but...
Yeah, could not a judicial review be forced on the grounds that the current law is not fit for purpose because it's not actually formulated on, they say that they will incorporate the latest science into their drug policy. Well, they've obviously ignored it, haven't they? Yeah. So does that technically make the law a bunch of crap?
You're saying that like it's something new, going back to 1892, 1893, the Indian Hemp Drugs Commission is actually, recommended against criminalising cannabis in the first place. Come 1928, when that was probably the greatest piece of work that had been done on cannabis, the British government, I think, actually abstained, to their credit, when cannabis was made illegal internationally.
Something convention in Cairo, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the Egyptians who were
the Egyptians and the Turkish that were very much behind it. Going back to the Wootton Report, Advisory Council reports in the 70s and 80s, it's just all been totally ignored by the politicians. And at the end of the day, the politicians do what the politicians want to do, which is what the Daily Mail wants them to do. And, okay, I do single out the Mail because I think they are probably the worst offenders.
But isn't the Mail, aren't the editors of the Mail just like the politicians in the sense that it's not votes, it's readers, but it's the same principle. Yeah. And therefore the same advice to all of us applies. Talk to people, get that message out there. If there ever comes a day when the editors will think they'll sell more copies by writing, let's regulate cannabis, think of all the tax we could get, then they'll do it.
Yeah,
exactly.
I'd like to move away from the idea that we necessarily need to convince all the editor of the Daily Mail. What can we do to show the politicians that actually a lot of the general public do support some reform of drug policy to move, like people do generally on the whole oppose the idea of criminalising people with drug problems or people who use drugs or people whose choice of medicine is cannabis. So I don't know if you contact the politicians, maybe would have any suggestions for this.
I mean, it's even on a of campaigning, of going along and seeing your own MP, insist on seeing or go face to face and make sure you get an answer. They again work through. I mean, there's some very skilled lobbying groups now, particularly the level 38. Very good on saving the forest. Very clever with getting messages, individual messages from constituents to MPs that they have to answer, preferably handwritten or more often email these days. Is to work on them. But the other one is to pull the right levers. There must be a limit to this. As you say, I've been along listening to the irrational arguments and seeing in the game here because of the fear that politicians have in this way. I'm hopeful. I've just finished a book which I wrote about how to be an MP. Published it 14 years ago, and I'm just rewriting it now. And the world has changed. I mean, there's more powerful relationship now. People with Burko as speaker than there has been before. The backbench is much more powerful in gaining time here. We're in the post-expenses, and in the first book I had 10 commandments. In this book I've got 30 commandments.